What's good? It's Woog. We are moving through our 2022 boxing awards, and now we are on upset of the year. So the criteria for upset of the year, it's not just what the betting odds were. Because you could that's an identifiable thing. Like, the betting odds are what they are, and they carry a lot of significance. If you don't think the odds matter, try betting against them. If you know better than the odds, beat the casino, basically, right? No, the odds are usually pretty dang good overall. But more so than just what the betting odds are, like comparing a minus 800 favorite, where you're like an 8-1 favorite, versus like a minus 500, is the profile of the fight. Because sometimes, yeah, like on an undercard, you could catch a total sleeper where like a minus like 1500 can pull off the upset, but it's somewhat inconsequential because you really didn't know too much about each of the fighters. One of them had a reputation, the other one was unknown. So it's not as simple as just looking at the betting odds and just saying, hey, those were the most lopsided odds. That's the biggest upset of the year. There is some like what the public was really thinking and what the magnitude of the fight was that is factored in here. And so here are my contenders for upset of the year. Jay Opataya beating Maris Briedis. Briedis was a 5-1 favorite, minus 500. Tony Yoka versus Martin Bakole. Tony Yoka was a 5-1 favorite, minus 500. Miguel Berchelt losing to Nakathila. Berchelt, even though he had just lost recently to Oscar Valdez, was a 5-1 favorite versus Nakathila. And by the way, it was kind of interesting. I was thinking when I was doing this list and kind of narrowing it down, like I was thinking there weren't really that many big upsets this year, but it's like, no, if you look a little closer, there were some pretty good ones. Like, not the best example, but Daniel Jacobs losing to John Ryder. Jacobs was only a minus 150, so that one is more like a reputation thing. But if you looked a little closer, saw where Jacobs was in his career, and the fact that he was going up from 160 to 168, maybe this one wasn't a big upset. Same thing with Abdullayev versus Linares. Jorge Linares lost to Abdullayev, but that one, if you look at even the betting odds, was nearly even money. I think that the public is cooling on their opinion of Jorge Linares' abilities at this juncture of his career. Abdullayev is somebody who got stopped in 4 rounds by Devin Haney, by the way. That's actually how Haney secured what was then, I believe, an interim belt that was then elevated to an actual belt, something like that. But Abdullayev is actually the guy who Haney beat to become a belt holder at 135. But yeah, Abdullayev stopped Jorge Linares in the late rounds. Chris Colbert losing to Hector Luis Garcia. Now in this one, Chris Colbert was a minus 2,000. Hector Garcia was a plus 1,500 in some books. That's a 15-1 underdog. So that was a major upset, and that's one of the contenders here. Guillermo Rigondeaux a lot of people don't even know this. We know about his accident, right? He was messing with a pressure cooker and making beans or something, burned himself really badly. Like, it was a big story in 2022. A big story. It kind of floated under the radar now that I think about it. But we know that Rigondeaux lost to John Riel Casimero, right? Very uneventful fight. But he also lost to Astrolabio. Now, Rigondeaux was a 8-1 favorite against Astrolabio. And Astrolabio won via decision against Guillermo Rigondeaux. And I feel like that was almost like not really talked about at all this year. But yeah, to me, that was one of the biggest upsets of the year. And then you've got Jonathan Rice or Johnny Rice beating Michael Coffey in the second fight. In their first fight, Coffey was a huge favorite, got upset by Johnny Rice, and Johnny Rice also won the rematch. Coffey has lost again since that. Rice was a huge underdog the first time, not so much the second time, so maybe that wasn't a huge upset this year. And then we've got Gary Russell Jr. losing to Mark Magsayo. Russell wasn't a huge favorite, but he was a 3-1 favorite. He was the longtime belt holder in the 126-pound division, longtime WBC champion, was fighting pretty much one time per year for several years. And we didn't see him fight all the guys in the division that we would have really wanted to see him fight. And he got injured. He was visibly injured in that fight against Magsayo. Basically fought majority of the fight with one hand. But yeah, Magsayo, not super spectacularly, but he pulled off the decision win and then lost the belt to Ray Vargas in, I believe, his very next fight. But yeah, that was a significant upset, not a huge one, but a significant one. And then we've got Dimitri Bivol beating Canelo Alvarez. Now, Bivol was a pretty sizable underdog. Canelo was like a slightly greater than 4-1 favorite, which in hindsight, you're thinking, what were they thinking? Well, just put your mind back before that fight and what the public consensus was on Canelo's chances at dominating at 175 in the way that he did at 168. It was almost like there was such a Canelo bubble, as online boxing analyst Richard Dwyer likes to say about certain fighters. There was a bubble around Canelo's reputation. Like, at that time, it seemed like he could do no wrong after he, conquered the guys, at least the guys he was fighting, in becoming undisputed at 168. Yeah, people thought he was going to beat Dimitri Bivol. I thought that he was going to win by maybe a round or something. I thought it was going to be super close. I've got tons of respect for Bivol. I've seen his fights in the past. I've seen him beat, everybody from Jean Pascal to Joe Smith Jr. to Sullivan Barrera to, everybody that he's fought up to this point. So, yeah, Bivol ended up turning Canelo away, beating him. He should have beaten him by a few rounds. The judges' scorecards were crazy. It was 115 to 113. Nuts. That was a terrible day of judging. It was so pro Canelo in how they judged the round over round action. But yeah, that was a significant upset. And by the way, if Jack Catterall would have gotten that decision win over Josh Taylor, that would have been one of the biggest upsets of the year. I mean, Josh Taylor in that fight was like a 9-1 favorite. Think about it, a 9-1 favorite, and now Josh Taylor has like relinquished 3 of his 4 belts trying to pursue the rematch with Jack Catterall. I mean, talk about like, life has other plans. You think you're making these plans. Well, life has other plans for you. I would have never thought that Josh Taylor would get so entrenched and so engulfed in this Jack Catterall saga. But yeah, if Catterall would have gotten that decision, that would have been one of the biggest upsets of the year. Now, my biggest upset of the year, though, is Chris Colbert losing to Hector Luis Garcia. Again, Chris Colbert was like a -2,000. Hector Garcia, I believe, was a late replacement. Kind of came out of nowhere. And yes, this one was the biggest lopsided betting odds one, too. This was a -2,000, as I said. Chris Colbert was a 20-1 favorite over Hector Garcia. And Garcia not only beat him, but he dropped him badly, hurt him. Chris Colbert was like holding on and trying to move across the ring, trying to evade, just trying to survive that fight. It got really bad for him. I mean, he hasn't returned to the ring since, and he was a pretty hot prospect, Chris Colbert was. But yeah, Hector Garcia has since also beaten Roger Gutierrez to win a belt there, and now he's about to fight Gervonta Davis. It's been a hell of a year for Hector Luis Garcia, but it started with that big upset victory over Chris Colbert. So that's my upset of the year. By the way, the runner-up would have probably been maybe Opataya beating the longtime, or multiple-time belt holder at cruiserweight, Maris Briedis. Even though the Rigondeaux loss to Astrolabia was a big one, and, Canelo losing to Bivol was a big one as well. But yeah, I'm going with Hector Garcia beating Chris Colbert as my upset of the year. Let me know what some of your upsets of the year are. What would you have as your number 1 upset of the year? And do you see any upsets on the horizon, given what we have right now in the early 2023 boxing calendar? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.